Okie doke, welcome back, and in this module we're looking at chapters 19 and 20 in Agnew and Brezina. The key in these chapters is to determine if policies are effective in controlling or preventing delinquency. At the beginning here, we're going to hark back to some of the information we looked at in chapter 5 about testing theories. To start, what is the difference between research and evaluation? Put simply, research is the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, for example, to understand whether children from low-income homes tend to engage in more delinquency. On the other hand, evaluation is the pursuit of knowledge for action. For example, does an after-school program for low-income children decrease the likelihood that they will engage in delinquency? In short, research tells us what is happening. Evaluation tells us whether our strategies to do anything about it are actually working. In the world of program evaluation, we refer to this as effectiveness. Is the program effective, and if so, to what degree? That is, how much does it decrease delinquency? Let's talk a little bit about experiments. You'll hear many terms for experiments, including experiment, experimental model, randomized experiment, and randomized control trial, or RCT. But these are simply different terms used for the primary methodology used in measuring effectiveness. The logic of an experiment is that you take a group of people, you apply some stimulus to them, and then you record their reactions to the stimulus. In practice, you will most often have two groups of people, randomly assigned to each. One group is called the treatment group, and they are the ones to whom the stimulus is applied. The other group is called the control group, and for them it's business as usual. At the end of the experiment, you record their actions and compare to see if those in the treatment group saw a significant change because of the stimulus. So, for example, let's say you want to test the effect of an after-school program for low-income middle schoolers in reducing delinquent behavior. First, you identify your sample, kids from a low-income neighborhood who all attend the same middle school. You gather a list of potential participants and use a computer or a method of counting to randomly split them into two groups of equal size. Do not do things like assign all kids with names starting with A through M to one group and N through Z in the second group. Do not assign all boys to one group and all girls to the other group. It's got to be completely random. The goal is to have two groups that look about the same on all socio-demographic variables, age, race, sex, family income, and so on. Let's say you're going to use self-report data on delinquent behavior. So you start by administering a pre-survey to all participants. Gather self-report data on delinquent acts committed in, say, the past 6 months. Then you contact all students assigned to the treatment group and invite them to participate in the after-school program. You contact their parents, you get permission, you follow up with the students to make sure that they will continue coming to the program. Allow the program to run its course, e.g. for a 6-month period, then administer a post-survey to all students. Again, self-report data on delinquent acts committed during the past 6 months. Finally, compare the results. Do students in the treatment group show fewer reports of vandalism, vagrancy, shoplifting, etc. than students in the control group? Researchers will often measure the effect size, which is a group of specific statistics that shows how much more of an effect the treatment has had on the outcome relative to the control. Now, if ethical and/or practical considerations make an experiment difficult to implement, there are alternatives. One is quasi-experimental design, QED. It compares two groups that have not been randomly assigned, e.g. two classrooms where one has been offered the after-school program. QED can compare two groups ex post facto. If you're called in to evaluate a program that has already been in existence, QED is used to compare any existing measures of delinquency from before the program started to when it ended. Another alternative is the statistical procedure called regression analysis. It can statistically control for differences between treatment and control groups. For example, if students volunteer for the after-school program, often your higher achievers and kids with lower prior delinquency will volunteer. Regression analyses can control for the effects of academic achievement, prior delinquency, and so on. If your results indicate that there is no significant difference between treatment and control, there are two possibilities. It's possible that the program really doesn't work, or it's possible that the program wasn't implemented well or correctly. This is called implementation fidelity. Okay, moving on. How do the police control delinquency? What are some effective practices here? Well, first of all, police work is not nearly as glamorous as it seems on television. Police officers spend less than half their time actually answering distress calls or in officer initiated public encounters like chasing down a suspect. Most of their on duty time is spent on paperwork and on cruising their beat, essentially making their presence known. A known police presence in an area is believed to be one of the largest deterrents of crime, and evidence suggests that this is true. However, evidence also suggests a saturation effect. That is to say, having a police presence has an effect on reducing delinquency, but continually increasing that presence does not necessarily have a continued significant effect on reducing crime or delinquency. In most cities and towns, officers have a specific area assigned for them to drive in a marked patrol car. The goal is to let the public know that the police are around. Most juveniles will encounter the police on the officer's regular beats. Some police departments even have officers or divisions devoted specifically to juvenile crime. They handle youth-oriented problems like gangs and drugs, truancy, underage drinking, and follow-up investigations into property and violent crimes committed by juveniles. Such officers receive special training or education, such as a course like this, to better understand juveniles. There's a lot more to read about this in Chapter 20, so be sure to check that out. Other practices found to be effective in reducing delinquency include attempts to foster closer ties between the police and the community. Especially in minority and low-income areas, residents are more likely to call the police if they feel they know and can trust their local officers. There are also attempts to solve the underlying causes of crime. This could include, for example, removing drug users, alcoholics, and the mentally ill from the streets and taking them to social care facilities. It could include interacting with residents and recommending crime prevention strategies. It could include actively involving community residents in the fight against crime, such as neighborhood watch programs, business watch programs, and mentoring programs. Lastly, let's talk about POP, problem-oriented policing. A specific type of problem-oriented policing designed to deal with the underlying causes of crime is SARA, S-A-R-A. This includes scanning. Police identify problems particular to their beat, for instance, auto thefts, burglaries, runaway teens. Analysis, collecting info from community arresting offenders and social service agencies in order to determine underlying problems. Response, deciding upon appropriate responses, for example, cracking down on drug crimes and or implementing a drug prevention program at local schools. And assessment, determine if the response has been effective, and if not, find an alternative. There are other examples of POP, problem-oriented policing, discussed in Chapter 20, so be sure you cover those. Okay, that's it for me. We've covered a lot of ground in this module, but it's important stuff as we head into the final section of the course. I'll see you online.